everyone, I'm Shanti, the artist behind Shanti Fine Arts. I have been doing a lot of portraits, tutorials in general these days, and today is one more of them. But it is something to make it easier for you. I know a lot of us struggle when it comes to portraits, especially with watercolor being a very hard medium in general. So we struggle even more with portraits with watercolors. So I came up with 3 great hacks that will make your job half as hard and half as time consuming. So let's see these 3 watercolor portrait hacks.
The first trick constitutes of combining graphite with watercolor. So what you can see right here is that I am first creating a layer of shading, light and shadow, just like you would do in a graphite drawing. I am creating the lights and shadows, and I'm going to blend a lot, and then I'm going to add the darks in the really dark areas and create almost half done drawing with graphite itself. And after that, I'm going to go over that with my watercolors. What it does is that it reduces the time involved with each particular media. If I would have tried to do a graphite drawing completely, it would have taken me at least 2 to 3 hours. And the same with watercolor. If I would have done this whole portrait only with watercolor, then again it would have taken me at least 2 to 3 hours, even though it is a very small portrait, only an 8 by 10 kind of size. Still, it would have taken me a very long time. But what this technique does is that it reduces that time to less than half. I only spent about an hour at the most in the entire drawing process, and that also was trying this technique for the first time. I'm sure if I try it another time, it will take even less time this time. And now that I know how much dark and I kind of go with graphite and what it would do, and because I kind of did not go all the way very dark with graphite because I wasn't sure how well that would merge with watercolor, but now that I know that it merges just awesome. Once you go over with watercolor, it is very hard to even find out, unless you know for sure already that there has been any graphite layers underneath. So that is definitely one of the best advantage to combine the two mediums together. And also that using a pencil obviously allows you to add a lot of details without using a brush. If you're new to watercolor, painting fine details in a portrait with watercolor brush could be hard. In that case, using the fine tip of a graphite pencil reduces that difficulty as well. Now, at this point, I would like to add a disclaimer that none of the 3 techniques that I'm showing you, or none of the 3 portraits that I'm showing you, are 100% complete. My goal was to show you the different techniques and not to make a complete portrait. So probably I would have had to spend another half hour more to make it even more beautiful, but you will get the general idea, and that is what my goal was in this tutorial, and that's why I did not give a lot of attention to the finishing the paintings to an absolute detailed maximum, like a final painting kind of thing. In the flower areas, I had to go over a lot with watercolors because I wasn't sure how much graphite I should put in the flowers and whether it would make a muddy look. But now you know that you can do the same with watercolors. The next technique that you are now watching is using watercolor first and then going over with charcoal. In case of graphite, you could do either ways. You could first paint watercolor and then do a layer of graphite as well. Just the other way around would work out fine. But if you're adding charcoal, then you have to add the watercolor first and then go over with charcoal. After adding charcoal, I would not recommend adding watercolor on top of it. It could create a very smudgy, muddy mess. So in this particular hack, the second technique, it only goes one way, whereas the first technique, it could go either ways. Either of the medium can be put in first and later. So in this technique, you can see that once again, I'm putting a very light few layers of with watercolors. I'm not at all worrying too much about the details, just putting in lights in the lighter area, darks in the darker area, filling out the entire drawing area with the colors that I intend to put in, and just creating the values, keeping the values more or less correct. The darker area is dark, the lighter area is lighter. However, I'm not going into much contrast with the watercolors. That I will do using the charcoals. I'm just creating a base layer, or more like a wash with my watercolors. Once the wash is done, I will let it dry 100%. Now if you're adding whether watercolor or charcoal or pen or whatever, or pencil, whatever you're adding on top, you have to let the basic watercolor layer dry first. That is a common thing that you would have to follow no matter what medium are you going to apply on top of it. Once it is completely dry, now I'm coming back with my charcoal pencil and adding a light layer. You can see that I'm not being very detailed or not blending very nicely. The more nicely you blend, the better your portrait will look. But my goal, like I said, was to demonstrate the different techniques and show you the different hacks. So I did not go into much length to create a beautiful painting. I instead focused on creating the tutorial and showing you the different tricks and tips that I could show in these particular techniques. So once again, these are not 100% detailed finished paintings, portraits. It is just intended for the purpose of your learning the different ways you can reduce the amount of time that you are spending on portraits and make it a little bit easier for you if you are new to watercolors or new to portraits or both. So that is more or less where I am going to with this charcoal pencils. Now the charcoal pencils come in different kinds of leads, from soft to hard to dark. So I would recommend starting from the softer leads and going towards the darker leads. That is the same thing that goes for graphite as well as charcoal pencils. And these are the first two kind of techniques. Now on to the third one. Just like the previous one, here also I am creating just a wash with the watercolor, just adding some layers of darks and lights and defining the colors in those areas. I'm not trying to create the finished painting with watercolor. That is not my goal. I'm just trying to establish the different areas and darks and lights, and adding some color to my painting is what my goal is. And after it is 100% dry, this trick or this particular technique involves using ink pen. I'm using a micron ink pen. By the way, all the mediums or techniques, all the materials that I have used in this particular tutorials are listed below in the video description, so please check it out and let me know what your thoughts are about each and every technique that I'm showing you, and definitely try them out and let me know if you like the video as well. Also, do not forget to subscribe, because unless you subscribe, you're going to miss out on videos that I'm posting every week. And after all that self-proclamation, let's get back to the tutorial. Now that my painting or the watercolor layer is 100% dry, I'm coming back with my micron pen and creating the layers with the ink pen. Now micron pens, I am using a 0.5 mm micron pen, but you can use multiple different nibs of different widths and angles, and thus create a multiple different types of lines, and that would actually make a lot more interesting painting than I have created. The great thing about this particular technique, just like the graphite one, is that you can go either ways. You can start with ink and then add watercolor on top, or add watercolor or add ink on top of watercolor, or you can just go in different layers in between each other, like start with watercolor, go to ink, then watercolor again, or whatever your heart pleases. It is not as limiting as charcoal is, where you can only add the top layer with charcoal and you cannot use that the charcoal layer as an underpainting. Charcoal can only be used as underpainting if you're going to do an oil painting. Otherwise, I would not recommend it. Although I have not tried it with oil pastel, so I'm not 100% sure if that would work or not. I hope you find these hacks useful and try them out. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching.